Welcome back, everyone. We're here at CPAC in Florida, sitting down with Ben Carson. And Mr. Carson, real pleasure having you on Crossroads.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with Epoch Times.
Now, I understand there's this new American Cornerstone Institute, which is trying to restore American values. Can you tell us about this?
Well, as I was coming to the end of my tenure at HUD, I was thinking how nice it would be to relax, to play golf and enjoy the rest of my life. But looking at the direction of the country, I realized that was not a possibility. We seem to be deteriorating rather rapidly. And when you think about how this country went from a bunch of ragtag militiamen to the pinnacle of the world in record time, you have to ask, how did that happen? Was that an accident? Or were there some principles that were involved? And in fact, there were 4 cornerstone principles: our faith, our Judeo-Christian values, which taught us how to relate to each other, to love your fellow man, not to try to cancel your fellow man. Our liberty, which is the reason that people came here from all over the world, because they wanted to live their own life. They didn't want somebody breathing down their neck, telling them everything that they could and could not do. And you see that is in the process of changing too. In the last administration, we got away from it to a great degree by getting rid of so many regulatory barriers, and that was the real reason that the economy sprung to life and did so incredibly well. Well, it will die just as quickly if we reimpose all of that upon it. Liberty is actually key. And also things like freedom of speech. Some people say, well, it's only a violation of freedom of speech if the government imposes it. It's not true. If big tech and the media impose restrictions on your speech and the government is compliant, it's every bit as malignant as if the government were doing it themselves. And then community, the whole concept of people helping each other. This was vital as this country was developing. If a farmer broke his leg, everybody else harvested his crops. They didn't ask him what his political party was. And we're moving away from that. Now we've gotten to a place where you can have a neighbor across the street who's been there for 20 years living peacefully, but now we allow the politicians and the media to convince you that he's your enemy because he has a different political sign in his yard. That's not America. We need diversity of opinion. We need discussion. We need to be able to look at the facts and develop our policies based on that. That's another thing that American Cornerstone will be emphasizing. And then the whole concept of life. As we devalue life from the womb to the tomb, we become much more callous and coarse in our relationships with each other. And this is being manifested quite clearly with the division and the tension that we're seeing. And we need to fix it before it's too late.
And so it seems like a lot of this is reestablishing the foundations of what created social harmony.
Exactly.
And it's a very different take from what's being pushed on us, that government is the only thing that can maintain social harmony, that people themselves are disenfranchised or enemies of each other, or based on position and class, that they're different and there's nothing can be done about it. Yeah. Taking this and making it a personal issue, that this is something you are empowered to deal with. Is this accurate?
That's accurate. And when you think about it, if we're all fighting each other, what is the logical conclusion there? And I can guarantee you that there are other entities looking in on us with great glee as we destroy ourselves, recognizing that it's going to accrue to their benefit, specifically China.
Now, a lot of people are wondering, especially because race issue is being pushed so hard by the Biden administration right now, that they're talking about systemic racism, and of course, I know your own story on this.
Right.
That you have a different take on the solution to racism, and what do you think the solution is?
Well, first of all, we need to recognize that there has been a history of racism in this country. We have to accept that. When I was growing up in Detroit and Boston, I faced it every day. The world is so much different than that today. It's night and day difference. And, failure to acknowledge that, I think, is purposeful, because there's an attempt to divide people, divide and conquer, and to create victimhood. If you can teach people that they're victims and that somebody else is the cause of their victimhood, and then that you are the solution, that you will save them, then it creates a power base for you. Obviously, none of that is absolutely true at all. And, we're in a situation where people are trying to divide us on the basis of race, income, age, religion, political affiliation, everything imaginable. Just divide the population and destroy them, but you can control all of those little divisions and make them think that you're their savior.
So you're saying basically there's these groups trying to divide us using these different narratives, and we can see the effect of that. This focus on the cornerstones, how is that addressing this issue?
Because we want to get back to focusing on what is good and what is valuable and what leads you upward rather than what leads you downward. And, we have history to tell us what is valuable and what isn't. It's one of the reasons that they're trying to destroy our history as well. Your history gives you your identity, and your identity provides you your belief system. And if you can destroy all that, you become a tabula rasa, you become a blank slate, which is very easy to manipulate.
You mentioned this attempt to destroy our history and the type of person that it creates based on your interpretation of history. And in the U.S., we see two different ideas on that. There's the 1619 Project and everything behind it, and there's the 1776 Project, everything behind it. What do you think are the two outcomes of these paths? Well,
if you only concentrate on what happened that was bad, it's sort of like Proverbs 17:9. It says, the person who keeps bringing up the wrong creates division and strife. And the person who says, let's learn from that and move on, creates peace. And this is exactly what's going to happen. If we go down the 1619 pathway, and we're always talking about slavery and how that is the foundation of everything in this nation, all that does, first of all, it's false. And secondly, it creates a lot of resentment. And it creates victimhood, and it creates guilt. Now, black victimhood and white guilt is a terrible combination. It results in absolutely asinine policies like abolish the police, which does no one any good. Whereas we look at 1776, and we look at those things that led to the development of the most powerful nation in the world, and the nation that has helped other nations instead of, like other powerful nations, devouring other nations. That only leads to a good place, particularly if we learn from things that happened in the past, acknowledge them, and move forward.
Now, you mentioned this issue between white guilt and black victimhood, and I guess there's two different ways with this as well. Where do you think that leads people in terms of racial harmony, and what do you think, from your standpoint, is with this cornerstone idea is a solution to racial harmony?
Well, obviously, the guilt and the victimhood lead to resentment, and leads to people doing things that don't make any sense because they feel guilty. It's not that they don't have any common sense, but the guilt overrides their common sense, and they start doing stupid things. Whereas when you look at those cornerstone principles of faith, which teaches you how to relate to your fellow man, of liberty, of how we can give people true liberty. At HUD, one of the things that I wanted to do very quickly is to change the attitude of there, you poor little thing, I'm going to take care of you, to how do we put you on a trajectory so that you become self-sufficient. That's real liberty. And community is what makes us strong. If we're fighting each other all the time, there's no way that we can possibly be strong. And when we have enemies in the world who want to destroy us, all we're doing is playing into their hands. And of course, we need to be talking about quality of life for people, including those drug addicts on the street who are homeless, and including, a whole host of people who are unfortunate. We need to be looking at solutions that will redeem those people, not solutions that keep those people in those positions.
when it comes to Republicans and Democrats, they talk about the same things, but they're different ways.
Well, they used to. They used to have the same goals, just different approaches to achieving those. It's very different now. The one party has been taken over by leftists, and their goals are not the same. They think America was evil, and it needs to be fundamentally changed. And that's very different from people who think that America is good and needs to learn from its past and become even better. Two completely different things.
Now, I think the narrative is with Democrats, they say that they want to, relinquish suffering, make people suffer less, but it's usually through more government policies. It's not lifting these people up through encouraging them as the Republicans want to do.
Right.
It's giving them things to help them in their situations, whereas the Republican stance is more, help people to succeed.
Right. And
how do you see this playing out, especially with homelessness and such?
Well, all you have to do is look at the last 4 years. And you look at the policies that really did change things for people, that put more money in people's pockets, that saw the lowest unemployment rates ever in the black community, in the Hispanic community, in the Asian American community, record lows for unemployment in women. Those kinds of things make a difference in people's lives. You can sit around with rhetoric all day long and talk about unity and how wonderful you are, but if you don't have the results, it becomes empty clattering, and that's what's gone on for decades before these last 4 years. And it's good that we can juxtapose the last 4 years against what's happening now and what will happen over the next few years. I think it will be so clear to people, and that needs to happen.
Well, now, when it comes to equality, there's a new narrative with this. It's equity, not equality, that's taken a step further. What does this really mean?
Well, equality obviously is something that we all can identify with. We want everybody to be treated equally. Equity, it looks more like everybody should have the same outcome. And that is not what is part of what made America great. You work hard, you achieve a lot, that accrues to you, it accrues to your community. You're sluggard, you do nothing, that accrues to you and that accrues to your community. We don't guarantee equity of outcome. And it started sort of with everybody gets a trophy. Everybody has not done the same thing. And incentivizing people to work hard is a good thing to do. The human brain is an amazing organ system. You have the ability to do almost anything that you can imagine, but you have to put some work behind it. It doesn't just happen spontaneously.
Ben Carson, real pleasure having you on Crossroads. Thank you.
Has been a pleasure. Thank you.